How do you build unbreakable discipline like Batman? Not by waiting to feel motivated, not by chasing inspiration every morning like it's fuel you can't survive without. Batman understood something most people never do. Discipline isn't a feeling. It's a decision, repeated until it becomes your identity. That's why Batman keeps moving, even when every part of him wants to stop. Why do you keep breaking promises to yourself? Why does motivation disappear after a few days, sometimes after a few hours? Why do some people stay disciplined for years while others quit every single Monday? By the end of this video, you will understand Batman's entire discipline framework, from the first principle to the final one that changes everything. Because Batman wasn't born disciplined, he built it. One habit, one sacrifice, one decision at a time. Stay until the end, because the final principle is the one that turns discipline into identity. Stop depending on motivation. Bruce Wayne could have waited. He could have waited to feel ready, to feel strong enough, to feel inspired enough to become something greater than his pain. He never did. Batman doesn't ask permission from his emotions. He acts because his standards demand it, not because his mood allows it. Most people treat motivation like fuel. They wait for the spark before they move, but motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like weather. Discipline is different. Discipline is the architecture underneath the weather, the structure that holds. No matter what storm passes through, Batman trains at 4 in the morning, not because he feels like it, but because that is simply what he does. There is no negotiation. There is no debate with himself. The decision was already made long before the moment arrived. This is the first shift you need to understand. Stop asking, "Do I feel motivated today?" Start asking, "What do my standards require of me today?" Motivation whispers, standards command. Every time you lower your standard to match your mood, you erode your own self-respect. And self-respect is the real currency of discipline. Most people never realize this. They think discipline is something you feel, but Batman understood something different. Discipline is something you choose, in the exact moment you don't want to. And that single shift changes everything. But choosing once isn't enough, because a decision without structure eventually collapses. Which is why Batman didn't just decide to be disciplined. He built a code to live by. Create a personal code. Batman doesn't operate on emotion. He operates on principle. There is a code beneath everything he does, an internal law that doesn't bend depending on how his day went. This is the second truth about unbreakable discipline. You cannot rely on how you feel in the moment. You must rely on who you've decided to be. Batman's code isn't complicated, it's absolute. He doesn't kill. He doesn't quit on Gotham. He doesn't break his word to himself. These aren't rules he considers. They are rules he obeys. Most people live by moods disguised as values. They say they value health until a bad day gives them an excuse. They say they value growth until comfort feels easier. But a real code doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you're committed to. This is why Batman is never inconsistent. His actions aren't reactions, they are expressions of identity. Ask yourself, what are your non-negotiables? What would you do even on your worst day, simply because that's who you are? If you don't have an answer, that's exactly where your discipline is breaking. A personal code turns your promises into obligations, and obligations to yourself are the foundation of self-trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you reinforce the identity of someone who does what they say. Every time you break it, you confirm the opposite. Batman never allows himself that weakness. This is where discipline is truly built, in the small, unseen moments where no one is watching, and only your code decides what happens next. But a code means nothing if you abandon it the moment resistance appears. Which brings us to the principle most people fail. Train when you don't feel like it. Real discipline doesn't begin when things are easy. It begins the exact moment motivation disappears. Batman trains through exhaustion, through injury, through nights when his body begs him to stop. Because he understands something most people avoid, comfort is not where strength is built. Resistance is. The moment you want to quit is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that transformation is finally happening. Most people retreat the second discomfort appears. They mistake resistance for a warning sign instead of recognizing it as the exact threshold where growth begins. Batman moves toward that threshold instead of away from it. This is mental toughness, not the absence of struggle, but the refusal to let struggle dictate your actions. Every night Batman doesn't feel like training is the night his discipline is truly tested. Anyone can act disciplined when life feels good. Only a few remain disciplined when everything in them wants to stop. This is where identity separates from convenience. You are not building discipline on your best days. You are building it in the moments you want to disappear. The next principle changes everything, because Batman doesn't simply tolerate difficulty. He uses it. Make pain part of the process. Batman doesn't avoid pain. He expects it. He doesn't see sacrifice as a punishment. He sees it as tuition. The price paid for becoming someone stronger. Most people run from discomfort because they believe ease equals progress. But comfort doesn't build anyone. It preserves who you already are. Growth demands friction. Batman trains his body past its limits, denies himself luxury, sacrifices sleep, relationships, and rest, not because he enjoys suffering, but because he understands delayed gratification. He is not chasing comfort today, he is building capability for tomorrow. This is where most people fail without realizing it. They want the results Batman has without accepting the discomfort that created them. But pain is not the enemy of discipline. Avoidance is. Every disciplined person you admire has one thing in common. They made peace with discomfort long before they became strong. Batman doesn't ask, "How can I make this easier?" He asks, "What is this pain preparing me for?" This mindset shift transforms suffering into fuel. And once you master that shift, the next challenge becomes controlling something even more dangerous than pain: your own emotions. Master your emotions. Emotionally reactive people break discipline the fastest. One bad mood, one frustrating moment, one emotional spiral, and suddenly all their standards disappear. Batman never allows this. He faces chaos, threats, betrayal, and loss, yet his decisions remain calculated. Controlled, precise, not because he feels nothing, but because he refuses to let feeling dictate action. This is emotional mastery, the ability to feel intensely without being controlled by what you feel. Most people confuse emotional control with suppression, but Batman doesn't suppress emotion. He filters it through discipline before it reaches his behavior. Anger doesn't decide his next move. Calculation does. Fear doesn't dictate his choices. Purpose does. This is why Batman remains effective in moments that would break most people. Ask yourself, how many of your bad decisions came from emotional impulse rather than clear thinking? How many broken promises to yourself began with, "I just didn't feel like it today"? Emotional mastery means creating space between stimulus and response, between feeling and action. In that space, discipline lives. This is where clarity is built, where patience becomes strategy, where calmness becomes power. And once you master this, you're ready for the principle that defines everything Batman represents. Become the type of person who never quits. This is where discipline stops being a task and becomes identity. Batman doesn't ask, "Do I feel like training today?" He asks a deeper question: what kind of man do I want to become? This single question changes everything. Because discipline rooted in tasks fades, but discipline rooted in identity becomes permanent. Batman isn't disciplined because he forces himself daily. He's disciplined because giving up was never part of who he decided to be. This is the deepest psychological truth behind unbreakable discipline. You don't need more motivation, you need a stronger identity. When your actions are driven by who I am instead of how I feel, consistency stops requiring effort. It becomes natural, automatic, inevitable. This is why Batman never quits. Not because quitting never crosses his mind, but because quitting contradicts the man he has already decided to be. Every disciplined choice reinforces identity. Every broken promise weakens it. Over years, small choices compound into unstoppable consistency. This is the final transformation. Not forcing discipline, becoming it. The final truth: Batman never became legendary because he was gifted. He became legendary because discipline became who he was. Every difficult choice, every early morning, every sacrifice made in silence built the person the world would one day fear and respect. The strongest people aren't those who never struggle. They're the ones who refuse to let struggle change their standards. That's the Batman method. If today you're making one promise to yourself, comment these 3 words. I choose discipline, not for this channel, not for anyone else, for the future version of yourself. Because one disciplined decision today can completely change who you become tomorrow.